What is going on, everybody? And welcome back to your source for fantasy hockey news, hot takes, and degenerate bets. It is the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast with Mr. Steele Roden and your boy Big Flip Livingstone. Wednesday edition. It is time to take a look at 5 bold predictions for the 2022-23 season on tap coming up. We are only 2 months away from puck drop, people, and it is time to get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You heard the music, and you know what time it is. It's time for the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast with Steele and Flip. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here today and for making us your first listen every single day. Steele and I are feeling the love. We've pushed way past the 150 subscriber mark. We are out here grinding and very excited for next season, which we are going to talk a lot about on today's episode. It's time for 5 bold predictions, maybe some very bold, maybe some not so bold, for the 2022-23 season. Fantasy impacts, fantasy predictions, overall predictions. Steele and I have come into today's episode blind. 5 predictions, bold, on each of our notepads here. I'm obviously and always intrigued to hear what Steele has to say, but even more so today, because now that calendar's flipped to August, Steele, it is actually full court press time for preparation for the fantasy draft season. Our countdowns are about to kick off over the next couple of weeks, so keep it tapped right here and make sure you subscribe. But Steele, last season, we had some crazy things happen in the NHL. We saw Evander Kane's resurgent career. We saw a number of on and off ice situations develop across the league that made it a bit of a wild one. But I think we're in store for another crazy one, my friend. And I'd like to hear what you have to say for these predictions.
Yeah, coming in blind, I don't really know what you're going to take or what your bold predictions are for this upcoming season. We may have 1 or 2 that are very similar. But I think for the most part, we're going to be a little bit off the radar, and I'm really excited to see what your response is. And I'm excited to see what the listeners' response is. So make sure you're commenting on the YouTube video, letting us know what you think of these bold predictions as well. But maybe this first one, we might have the same. And let's start with the hometown buds here, the Toronto Maple Leafs. And, I think we might be the same on this one. And my bold take here is Austin Matthews scores 70 goals this season if he plays a full 82 games. And that's a big if. So if he can play a full 82 games, I think it's not far-fetched that this guy, this god for the Toronto Maple Leafs, can score 70 goals in a season. And it's been a long time since we've seen a player score 70 goals in a season. I think that was back in 92 or 93 with Teemu Selanne in his rookie season and Alexander McGillney, where they both each scored 76 goals. So that's a tough record to beat as well. But it's been 30 years. I think Austin Matthews can be the next player to get it done.
If there's anyone to get it done, and those are 2 special players, by the way, complete sidebar conversation, Teemu Selanne and Alexander McGillney, unbelievable. But the fact that number hasn't been touched since 2 players in the early 90s, I think is very indicative of the difficulty of hitting that number in general. But Steele, that was my second bold prediction right here on the page under what I'll hit you with right after this, because maybe this is one of those bold predictions that don't sound so bold. But when you look at it on paper, it is, because 70 goals is an impressive feat. But if anyone can do it, you are spot on. Austin Matthews developed his game to a point that we saw last year. He was able to get it done at both ends of the ice. And I think the confidence that we saw in his defensive game really started to translate into more puck possession and more confidence with the puck on his stick in the offensive zone. And I really do think you also hit the nail on the head. 73 games last season. He squeaks in 81, 82 games. We're looking at a much different number because we know he is a guy that scores in bunches, Steele. And another one prediction right away. That might be our first and only one that is the same, but I am with you. Austin Matthews pops the 70 cherry this season. I could see it happening, especially if he plays 80, 81, 82 games.
And I'm actually going to continue on this hot take as well. I think he scores 70 goals, but has less than 105 points that he had this past season. So I think he's going to be shooting the puck more. I don't think he's going to be trying to facilitate. Yeah, if he's shooting the puck more and if he gets to 70 goals,
I
there's
like
no
it.
way he gets past than 30 plus assists. So I think
I
he
absolutely
records,
like it. He's going to have to shoot the biscuit a lot more, meaning those assist numbers are going to go down. But this man shoots better than anyone in the game right now. When he's feeling it, that release is absolutely killer. It freezes goaltenders. They don't know what to do with it, and it's lethal. So I agree with you, and I appreciate this analysis from my co-host as always, because you're always holding it down with the proper hockey analysis. So thank you for that, because I'm sometimes flapping me gums. Speaking of which, let me drop this on you very quickly, because the team that I think has had the strongest offseason, arguably, in my opinion, are the Detroit Red Wings. And we know the Eastern Conference is tough, Steele. We know the Atlantic Division is now stacked. And I would like to also point out that the Detroit Red Wings finished with 1 point less than the Buffalo Sabres only one season ago, and 33 points short of a playoff spot. Yes. So I know they have to be much better. But my second hot take is the Red Wings make the playoffs in a wild card spot. I think they have what it takes up the middle, up front, and now on the back end with some nice additions. If you have Andrew Copp, Dylan Larkin, Lucas Raymond, Tyler Bertuzzi, don't forget about Jakub Vrana, David Perron, Philip Zadina, Dominic Kubalik now in the mix. That's a very legitimate top nine. I know nothing has been played and it's all on paper, Steele, but that's what this is about. It's bold takes. And I'm saying the Red Wings squeak in there in a wild card place. I don't know what team bounces out. Actually, I do. Stay tuned after the break for more predictions where I will predict some teams that will not be making the cut.
Yeah, I think that is a pretty bold take as well. You know, obviously, and I have talked a lot about the Detroit Red Wings over the last season, about how they are trending in the right direction. For me, this really does. It's a do or die for the Detroit Red Wings with their goaltending situation. Yes. They just acquired Alex Nedeljkovic just last season. They get Ville Husso in the offseason as well. Their goaltending duo looks a lot better than what they had last season, and I think it's do or die with those two guys in the crease. And I expect them to live up to the expectations that you and I and a lot of people have for the Detroit Red Wings this season.
Hey, you called it. It's a bold take, because if we look at just the Atlantic Division alone, let alone the other Metro teams that'll be buzzing around for those wild card spots, because I'm not going to go ahead and say they're finishing second or first, but that would be nice for my prediction. But I will say that they are a playoff team, but that means Boston, Washington, the two teams that were on the bubble last year, they're out. Does that mean Ottawa, who's taken a big step forward?
It's a possibility.
That could happen. Montreal has gotten better. Carolina has made moves. Maybe the Columbus Blue Jackets have improved. They're going to be sniffing around for that wild card spot. So this is a bold take in my opinion, but one that, speaking of bets, I'm going to be bringing up some of those around the break as well, so stay tuned for that. An odd on the Detroit Red Wings to make the postseason is very worth, a 1-unit bet at maybe 40 or $50. But hit me with your second bold take, Steele, and we'll head to break.
My second bold take, and I don't know, this might be a little far-fetched for you, but
hit me.
This is a big if. I believe the New York Islanders finish top 3 in the Metro Division if they are able to sign Nazem Kadri, which as of right now, they are the front runners to land Nazem Kadri.
We haven't talked about that either, but we kind of predicted it.
Yeah. If they are able to sign Nazem Kadri, they finish top 3 in the Metropolitan Division. That is my bold take.
I love the caveat of the signing. They end up finishing with 84 points, 5th in the Metro last season. And I think all that needs to be said is 2 words. Ilya Sorokin immediately makes them a team that is competitive every single night he's in the cage. That's my take. I've talked about him being a top 3 draft pick, in my opinion, top 3 rounds, even top round. But I think, like you said, with the right addition, and I expect them to make a couple of moves still. There's a couple of veterans out there. I could see Stastny headed there as well. Yep. I think Lou Lamoriello has been way too quiet. And I expect him to make some moves, but we know this. He's a ninja. He moves in silence. So we'll see what happens there. I think your take is a bold one, given how tough the Metro is, but I'm loving it, Steele. Again, good odds on the New York Islanders to make a splash and enter the playoffs. That's definitely a bet worthwhile because, the Matt Barzals, Ilya Sorokins of the world, they add Alex Romanov. He's probably going to be a top pairing guy now. Couple of good players on the back end, Steele. So you add in Nazem Kadri. They only missed the playoffs by 16 points. Maybe that's enough to push them over the top. But we're going to get to a lot more around the break. We each have 3 more bold predictions. I have one for all you West Coast hockey fans out there that you're definitely going to want to be paying attention to, with some updated Stanley Cup odds. Speaking of odds, you got to go to betonline.net for the fastest and easiest way to check on all of your betting needs. Find all of your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for lines, games, and updated odds. Find reviews and news of every single league, from Major League Baseball to the NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports wagering info. From live in-game betting, scores, to podcasts, they have you covered. Head to betonline.net today or use your mobile device to learn more about the actions happening right now. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Don't forget, we are free and available on all podcast platforms, which also includes YouTube. So if you want to see the beautiful faces of Flip Livingstone and Steele Roden, make sure you're hitting the subscribe button. Flip and I appreciate all the love and support out there.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you so much for tuning in for today's episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. And Flip, I'm going to throw it right back over to you for your third bold prediction of this upcoming season.
I teased the West Coast prediction, and I'm going to tease it again. I'm leaving it for later in the show because we've been talking about the Atlantic Division a lot, and I'm going to keep the conversation right there before I turn to my last two predictions that have to do with the West. We talked about teams making the playoffs. So that means someone is going to be on the outside looking in, Steele. And after a couple of glances into the depth chart in Boston, and the offseason that started with a really bunch of weird stuff with the relieving of the coach and the beef between Pasternak and the GM in Boston, something's not smelling right in Boston, and something's not looking right up the middle in Boston as well. We highlighted the lower depth in the bottom six. We highlighted the lack of talent up the middle, aside from maybe Jack Studnicka and Patrice Bergeron. Bergeron has a lot of miles on that body. The back end also leaves a little bit to be desired. I think their real strength, Steele, and, take me down a peg if you want to do that, is in net with Linus Ullmark and Jeremy Swayman coming off the seasons that they had. And I think both of them take a step forward, and both of them are viable options in terms of deeper fantasy looks. But I'm going to say this. That was a really long preamble, but what I'm trying to get at is the Boston Bruins miss out this season. They have not done enough in the offseason. Swapping in Pavel Zacha from Eric Haula, in my opinion, is a downgrade, number one, but I'm not the GM, so there you go. But number two, we know the Atlantic Division has gotten so much better around them, Steele. And if not for the huge gap between them, the Buffalo Sabres, the Detroit Red Wings, and Ottawa Senators last year, I think they would have been in trouble to make the postseason. And I think they will be a missing out team right on the bubble, though, right on the bubble.
I think a lot of people will look at this as a bold take. I don't look at it that way at whatever. I think this is a good take for you. And I really appreciate you bringing this team up right now because, like you said, the teams in the Atlantic Division, like the Detroit Red Wings and the Ottawa Senators, have done absolutely phenomenal this offseason and have elevated their game in every single way that you could think of. Maybe the Senators can get some help on the blue line, but small things like that they still need to work on.
Yes.
But their team has definitely elevated and gone to a different level for this upcoming season. And for me, the Boston Bruins have digressed because when you think about the Boston Bruins, but also just Boston as a city, they're winners. The Boston Red Sox, the New England Patriots, the Boston Bruins, they are a winning town, a winning city.
And it grinds my gears every time someone says it.
It grinds our gears. But it's the truth.
It's true.
It's the facts.
Yep.
And how many years now have the Boston Bruins been in the playoffs consecutively? They've been in the playoffs, it seems like,
maybe
for
10.
at least over a decade. At least over
10,
a decade.
yeah.
They are a winning team, but this could finally be the time when we see other teams that are progressing kind of, hey, it's our turn now. Get out of here. And that could definitely be the situation for this season. So I like that you bring up the Boston Bruins. They have also been linked to Nazem Kadri, which you and I might actually have a full-on panic attack and might actually cry if that actually happens. So hopefully it doesn't for the Toronto Maple Leaf fans out there. But now let's throw it out west because I know you want to talk about some Western teams, and so do I.
Do it. This
might be the boldest prediction out of all of them. And you know me. I haven't been a big fan of the Nashville Predators. Yep. I think the Nashville Predators finish top 5 in the league next season. That is my bold prediction for the Nashville Predators. They finished 15th in the league last season. I believe they finished top 5 in the league this upcoming season.
Look, heading into last year's playoffs, you and I did an NHL playoff predictions episode. You did it from your hotel room in some sort of beautiful island spot. You can remind me of the Mexico, I believe.
Punta Cana.
There you go. Close enough. I was on the road in Chicago, and one of the first things we talked about was how tough the Nashville Predators had it going up against the future, soon to be Stanley Cup champions without Juuse Saros. This season, I think, is going to be a different one for the Nashville Predators, and I've said it on this show already. This is just too well coached and run of an organization, top to bottom. And I've mentioned David Poile before in the general manager's chair for the Nashville Predators. Roman Josi, Dante Fabro, Ryan McDonough, and Matthias Ekholm serve as a very astute four-man defensive unit. Say what you will about their offensive game other than Josi, but those four defensemen can hold it down. And if Juuse Saros can stay healthy, they have enough guns up front, in my opinion. You sprinkle in Nito Niederreiter now on the second line with Mikael Granlund. You have Philip Forsberg, Ryan Johansson, and Matt Duchene forming one of the more deadly lines in the NHL. And I'm with you, Steele, because the last I looked also at a very nice little juicy sprinkle. I obviously have the betting odds up at all times. Let me hit you with the odds for the Nashville Predators for the Stanley Cup. Plus 3,500 is worth a $10 bet, my friend. Most definitely. So hot take for sure, but I'm with you. And I think we can both agree the Western Conference at the bottom, very wide open.
Yeah, definitely wide open. But I think that I've talked about this a lot. I've never been a huge fan of the Nashville Predators. I haven't really been a fan of Juuse Saros, but they have quickly turned the page for me. I really like this team heading to the season. Juuse Saros, a top 3 pick for fantasy leagues. You already talked about they re-signed Philip Forsberg, Ryan Johansson. They re-signed Nito Niederreiter, which I think was a very underrated signing. I think a lot of teams missed out on signing this guy. He brings a lot to the table. We've talked about Tanner Jeannot as well. So guys like that, the young guys they have in the lineup who can score goals, who can be physical and make a difference for this team. Top five team in the league next season, the Nashville Predators.
A lot to like in the bottom 6 as well, Steele. Tanner Jeannot, Colton Sissons, a gritty centerman who can move the puck. Yakov Trenin, another gritty forward who is, all of these are under the radar names, and they're ones that you can pay attention at the very, very back end of deep dynasty drafts. These aren't guys that you're going out and getting in the top 5 or 10 rounds, but Tanner Jeannot might in banger leagues. He puts up another 25 point season, something like that. Also, take a look at the bottom line in Cody Glass as a top 10 pick only a couple years ago. Hasn't panned out yet, but GM David Poile makes these moves, and this is a team that's always going to be in the mix. And top to bottom, Steele, not a lot of holes to poke in this Nashville Predators team. So as much as that is a bold take, I think it's a good one. So I think we're back-to-back bold but good takes here. But like Steele said off the top of the episode, drop it in the comments, slide into the DMs, hit us up on Twitter. Let us know. Are we way off the mark? Are we hitting the button? Let us know and drop all the reviews, subscribes that you'd like, because we appreciate it.
Yeah, and thank you so much for tuning into the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, making it your first listen every single day. Again, don't forget to hit the subscribe and the follow button. You'll get all the latest episodes of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. And Flip and I appreciate all the love and support out there. So thank you so much again for tuning in for today's episode. And Flip, let's keep it rolling with the Western Conference. I'll throw it over to you because I'm really excited to hear what your bold prediction for this upcoming season is.
I saved my 2 boldest takes for the end of the episode, mostly because I'm trying to build the anticipation, but secondly, because they are very spicy, I had to prepare myself for this. Bold take number 4 of the episode is going to talk about the Edmonton Oilers, one of the teams that has hit my notebook for this show more often than not. From the very beginning, when we got Evander Kane moved on, I believe, the second episode of the reboot of this show with Steele.
Yeah.
All the way up until me saying last year to throw a 20 on them for the Stanley Cup. They missed out just barely. But at plus 1,600, I am going to say that the Edmonton Oilers make the Stanley Cup final this year. That is going to be one of the futures bets that I'm sprinkling. It is probably the hottest take I have on this notepad. But, Steele, improvements in the goal, huge.
Yeah.
That could have been a difference for them against Calgary, where they got absolutely pumped. Zach Hyman, Connor McDavid and Evander Kane, arguably, and not in a tough argument, form the most balanced line in the league. You have a little bit of everything. Couple of power forwards, a distributor, some speed, size, skill. They have everything on that top line. And now a second line all of a sudden, a couple years under Kyler Yamamoto, a good year from Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Leon Draisaitl, obviously we know has sometime had to slot up and down that lineup. But they arguably have one of the best top 6 forward groups in the league. The addition of Jack Campbell, Steele, and the openness of that Western Conference gives me the look at plus 1,600. The West is wide open, in my opinion. We know the blue line leaves so much to be desired, and there's nothing I can really say to that other than if you read into, which I like to do, Edmonton Oilers blogs and prospect picks and previews, a lot of people are expecting Evan Bouchard to take a massive step forward next year.
Yeah.
These are people that watch a lot more Edmonton Oiler hockey than me. I'm not going to say run out there and draft Evan Bouchard in the top 5 rounds or something, but he's going to be one of my players, Steele, that is going to be one of those sleeper or under the radar players that could be huge. And at plus 1,600, I'm going to stop talking now so you can chirp me a bit. Plus 1,600, I'm saying Oilers Cup final. I'm not going to go as bold to say they win it, but I will be betting on it.
It is so hard right now because I agree with everything you just said, but it's so hard to picture the Edmonton Oilers in the Stanley Cup Finals. And you just talked about Darnell Nurse, you talked about Evan Bouchard, but they do not have a great blue line. I honestly believe that Jack Campbell had a better blue line in front of him with the Toronto Maple Leafs last season than he has this season with the Edmonton Oilers. But again, you have some of you have probably you have the best player in the league, Connor McDavid, and then one of the top 5 players in the league in Leon Draisaitl. So this team their future this upcoming season is very advantageous. At 1,600, like you said, for the Stanley Cup, I would take those odds as well. But it's just, for me, very hard to see the Edmonton Oilers in the Stanley Cup Finals after so many years of just honestly just disgust and defeat. Like it's just been a very long time for the Edmonton Oilers.
And I hear you, and that's why these bold predictions are exactly that, bold. But at plus 1,600, they're also getting a lot of respect, Steele, because they're right there in the mix with teams like the Pittsburgh Penguins, Minnesota Wild, Vegas Golden Knights, and Calgary Flames. So those are all teams that I would say, if I came out here and said the Minnesota Wild are a dark horse for the Stanley Cup, I don't think you would have laughed at me. So Vegas is here showing that respect. So I will say that. And I'll just leave it at this. I could see the Edmonton Oilers doing very much what they did last season in the regular season, hovering right around second, right around third in that division, even maybe a little bit better, and making a big move at the deadline this season. They have all of their first-round picks over the next 3 seasons, 2023, 2024, and 2025. This team, for me, Steele, is right there on the bubble, and I could see them trading some of their future to add a D-man. They're big up front. They're getting big on the back end, and those are the teams that win cups. You and I can both agree on that. But at plus 1,600, I'll be sprinkling a 20-piece, maybe a 30-piece. We will see. Please tap me with your 4th bold prediction, and we can wrap it up with our 5th.
Yeah, well, I was going to talk about the Chicago Blackhawks, but I don't think it's going to be that bold. I was going to say that they're going to finish dead last in the league. I don't think that's that bold, though.
They're hitting dead last.
Kane, yeah, I think Patrick Kane, Jonathan Taves are going to be dealt, definitely before the trade deadline. I think they're going to request a trade. So I'm just going to move forth. I'm going to head back east, actually. I want to talk about 2 teams out east in the Metropolitan Division.
Okay, We're sprinkling it everywhere. I like that.
Yeah, it's chaos right now. It's chaos.
Yeah,
but
that's okay.
For me, the bold prediction this upcoming season, I have the New York Rangers winning the President Trophy this season and finishing top as the top dogs in the NHL next season. I have them winning the President Trophy. I've been so high on this team the last 2 seasons.
True.
I've told you.
It's the Blue Shirts podcast.
It is the Blue Shirts podcast. But I told you 2 seasons ago, I had big expectations. They really let me down not making the playoffs. I had expectations for this last season as well. They got into the playoffs. They make it to this Stanley Cup, the Eastern Conference Finals. They lose to the Tampa Bay Lightning. Very, very, very hard to lose to the Tampa Bay Lightning, but it's the back-to-back it was the back-to-back Stanley Cup champions at the time. Yes. I think they get even better this season.
All right.
I think they missed an opportunity with not re-signing Andrew Copp, but apparently they wanted to go in a different direction. I respect it. They signed Vincent Trocheck. I think, again, they elevate their game. Igor Shesterkin becomes the best goaltender in the league, and they finish the top team in the NHL.
When you have Igor Shesterkin in net, it was very much like I was mentioning Ilya Sorokin again, two beautiful top-tier Russian goaltenders. When you have a guy like Igor Shesterkin, you're automatically in the mix, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And speaking of what you're saying about a prediction that's bold, they finished here. I'm pulling this up very quickly because you know me with numbers, but they finished with 110 points, and the Florida Panthers are the President's Trophy winners with 122. So 12 points difference. They could be there next year for sure. And I'll hit you with this. If you're thinking this, Steele, I would head out there to your favorite sports book, probably Bet Online, and grab the New York Rangers for the Cup then at plus 2,000 right now.
Yes, sir.
Because that is a very, very, very juicy odd. And you know me, when I pull up these future boards, my eyes get a lot bigger than my wallet. But there are some really good angles to hit this board early this season, people. So make sure you are also tuned in over the upcoming weeks where Steele and I will be dropping our real predictions for next season in terms of players, top positional drafts, and, of course, the overall standings in the league. But I'm with you, man. The Rangers are going to be dangerous. And let's wrap that one up, though, because I am excited to hear our both final bold predictions. And why don't you just kick us off and hit me with your fifth? Or was that your fifth?
No, that was my fourth. I'll kick it. I'll hit the fifth prediction right now. It might not be as bold, but I think it is a bold, especially for fantasy owners and fantasy leagues this upcoming season. And this is a guy, obviously, that I think should be taken in the first round, maybe even the second, depending. Actually, he might drop to the second round now that I think about it. Alexander Ovechkin. I think it's going to be a tough season for him. He's losing Nicholas Backstrom. I don't think he comes back from the hip injury, the hip surgery he had. Apparently, it's really affected his game. He only played 47 games last season. The top line right now, and you've talked about Connor Brown. So it's Connor Brown, Alex Ovechkin, and Evgeny Kuznetsov. My bold take for this season, I'm going to disregard the COVID season last year because everyone had a down year. But this guy continuously puts up 40, 45, 50-plus goals over the last 8 seasons.
Yeah.
I don't think he scores more than 35 goals this upcoming season.
Under 35 goals for Ovi is a bold prediction. But I think, again, I don't know. Like, my gut wants to disagree with you. But there is a regression, I think, coming up for the Washington Capitals.
Yeah. Can
Dylan Strome work out? Can Connor Brown work out? Those are a couple of big ifs, in my opinion. We know those are targets, again, boomer bust situations potentially with Connor Brown. I like what it'll do for Connor Brown's fantasy value, but overall for the success of Alex Ovechkin, is Connor Brown the facilitator that Ovechkin needs to feed him the puck? We're going to soon find out, because I'm telling you, in Washington, if Connor Brown doesn't work out on that line, they have some young players that they'll be cycling through that top line. Connor McMichael and others are going to be getting some looks. So be wary with the fantasy value in general with the Washington Capitals coming up, is what I would say. If anything, I'd be looking to that second line in Oshie, Strome, and Anthony Mantha, if they can still stay healthy. But I'm with you, Steele. I could see 90 points, 50 goals. I just think it's natural to expect him to take a step back. 15 goals back is a bold take, but I could see it. It's all going to play out. Let me drop my last take with you. And this is very fitting because you're talking about a Russian regressing, and I'm going to talk about potentially your favorite Russian progressing even more in Kirill Kaprizov. And I'm going to go with a big flip, triple dip, bold take to finish this episode even more spicy. My boy Kirill Kaprizov, from what I saw last year, some underlying metrics, some of the steps forward, and the chemistry he formed with Ryan Hartman and Matt Zuccarello. Also, you want to talk about sleepers that don't get enough credit? Matt Zuccarello and Ryan Hartman should be at the top of both of those lists, because those are two fantasy studs that will have another good year with Kaprizov doing what I expect him to do, and that's lead the league in goals, assists, and points. Next season, if he can stay healthy, I expect Kaprizov to absolutely pace the league in those categories. That's right, over guys like Connor McDavid, over guys like Austin Matthews. I know I predicted 70 for Austin Matthews, but I still think at the end of it all, Kaprizov will come out on top with at least a 60 piece. Looking at some of his numbers, Steele, and I know that's a bold take, but I think you can agree. 47 goals last year isn't even scraping his capacity. He wasn't even close to topping out. What worries me is this. Obviously, it's a very bold take. Obviously, Leon Draisaitl is also going to be right there. Nathan MacKinnon is ready to tear someone's head off. That's for sure. But Kaprizov is just starting to scratch the surface, in my opinion. And the Minnesota Wild, the chemistry that he has on that line, allows him to do his thing. If all of this Russian army business can shake out okay, I think he is the league leader in points next year and the Rocket Richard winner.
It's enough to make a grown man cry, man. It's enough to... I love when we talk about the
It's
Minnesota
my spiciest
Wild.
take of the day, that's for sure.
I love it. I'm here for it. I love it. I love that we're talking about the Minnesota Wild. I love that we're talking about Kirill Kaprizov. I'm not sure he goes past Austin Matthews for goals next year, but I love where your head's at. He could finish at the top of the league for points. I do respect that, and I do think that is a possibility. This guy is just, again, like you said, he's scratching the surface right now. The chemistry with Zuccarello and Hartman has just been absolutely phenomenal. I absolutely love this guy. I love that team. I love the Minnesota Wild. I am here for all the takes, Flip.
Thank you. And I'll hit you with this. As a guy who's just coming into his age 25 season, I think the Minnesota Wild have done a very good job of not overplaying him. 18 minutes in his first season, only 19 minutes a game in his second. They throw him out there for another minute or two a game, Steele. I'm going to say that 47 goes to 60 without much stress. He gets off to a good start. This guy is going to be in the top 5. And I haven't looked at the odds for him on the Rocket or to lead the league in scoring Art Ross style. But I'm going to tell you what, they're going to be juicy, and they're definitely going to be worth a look come next season. And I don't think there's much else to say other than that means he's also in the mix for the Hart Trophy. And
Yes,
I'll
sir.
leave you with this. Oh, wait. After Connor McDavid, Austin Matthews, Leon Draisaitl, and Nathan MacKinnon, Mr. Kirill Kaprizov is right there at number 5 as the 5th favorite for the Hart Trophy next season. So maybe me not so bold on this take, sir.
I absolutely love it. I love the bold takes we came with for this episode. We're going to continue with our bets and predictions for the month of August, leading up to the upcoming season. So much more to talk about, and we're here for you to give you all the news and information. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. But for your second listen, you have to go check out Locked On NHL. Locked On experts give you a daily 30-minute podcast on all things NHL all year long. Stay up to date on everything in the hockey world. Locked On NHL, your daily 30-minute NHL podcast. It's free and available just like this podcast right here. So make sure you hit the subscribe, hit the follow button. Once you do, you'll get all the latest episodes Monday through Friday, 7 o'clock in the morning Eastern time. We are dialing the episodes back just a little bit in the month of August, but we will be ramping back up in the month of September.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much again for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Have a great day. Good luck with all your bets out there, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.